Now, this could age horribly, okay? But I'm just going to say right now, I do not buy any rumor that has the Giants taking J.J. McCarthy or any quarterback for that matter at pick 6. And I'm going to explain why. Before we dive into it, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. Also, be sure to follow me on all social media at JK Bogan. Let's dive into it. So, looking at the Giants, they went out, they had an interesting offseason. They go out and get Jalen Mills. They get Jermaine Illuminor. They go out and get John Runyon, Aaron Stinney. Like, they got, some role players, right? Isaiah McKenzie, Miles Boykin, Drew Lock even. And then they had a bombshell. They went out and they acquired Brian Burns and signed him to a long-term deal to go with Kayvon Thibodeaux to be one of the more athletic pass rushing duos in the NFL. Now, I like a lot of players on the Giants. Jalen Hyatt was my number 1 wide receiver last year. Love him. I like Wan'Dale Robinson. He's had issues with injuries, but I do like him. I like him as a slot guy. I like Isaiah Hodgins, underrated 4th wide receiver option that, basically came over from Buffalo. Brian Dable brought him over. I like Darius Slayton. Guy who can take a top off the defense. I like his field stretching ability. Andrew Thomas is awesome at left tackle. I like John Michael Schmitz at center. I like Jermaine Illuminor. I think Evan Neal still has a future in this league. I'm not out on him. I like Darren Waller and Daniel Bellinger. Daniel Jones. How do I feel about Daniel Jones? Well, I'll say this. Daniel Jones got paid a lot of money. A lot of money. I don't see the Giants in his first year of that contract getting hurt. I don't see them pulling the plug on it now. Okay? I also don't think that they would have gotten Brian Burns if they weren't trying to make a run here. And they did go out and get Devin Singletary because they lost Saquon Barkley. Now, I like Eric Gray, but I definitely think they could use some help in the running back room. Unfortunately for them, if they wanted to find a franchise running back in the first round, there isn't one to draft this year. But it is a decent running back class because I think there's going to be a lot of guys in the 2nd, 3rd round that you can go out and snag. On the defensive side of the ball, Dexter Lawrence is one of the best interior defense linemen in all of football, absolutely dominant. I mentioned Brian Burns, of course. I already mentioned Kayvon Thibodeaux. They do have Azeez Ojulari, who was a 2nd-round pick in 2021. Bobby Okereke, really good signing. Not this past year, but a year or so ago from Indy. They have a guy in Micah McFadden who I think is underrated. They brought back Isaiah Simmons, who they got via trade from Arizona. I think really right now, Deonte Banks, last year's 1st-round pick, good 1st-round pick, like the pick. I think you feel really good about him long-term. They have Cordell Flott, and they have Nick McLeod, okay? They have Trey Hawkins as well as Stanley Thomas Oliver and Darnay Holmes. And they have Aaron Robinson. So I think they need a corner, okay? Looking at safety, they brought in Jalen Mills. They also have Jason Pinnock, who played really well. Dane Belton. I went to the Rams-Giants game this past year. Dane Belton was insane in that game. We'll see what ends up happening with his career, but I do like him at least as a backup. So with that said, corner's an option. Safety could be an option. I like their linebackers, but they could add another guy. I think Darian Beavers hasn't really gotten a shot. 6th-round pick in 2022. I actually really like him. They also have Carter Coughlin as well. But I think they could go linebacker. Edge, I could see them adding another piece there. Interior defensive line, at least for the depth, I could see them going later. On the offensive side of the ball, Jalen Hyatt, he is going to be likely their number 2 because I think they're going to go out and get a number 1 receiver this year. Now, I think Jalen Hyatt is going to be an absolute stud. That doesn't mean the Giants aren't going to go out and get a wide receiver. Isaiah McKenzie and Miles Boykin are not enough to stop the Giants going out and getting another receiver. Okay? Offensive line feels pretty good. They invest in the offensive line. I think they're looking good there. Do you draft Joe Alt just because he's the best player available? Maybe if he is on your board, you consider that. Maybe they go Brock Bowers. I don't see him going this high, though. So at pick 6 here, you have really what it really comes down to is JJ McCarthy, or in my opinion, Rome Odunze, or a trade. And the Giants, in my opinion, would be making a major mistake if they drafted JJ McCarthy. I don't think you're getting somebody that's not replicable in the next draft. Okay. That's my issue with a lot of these quarterbacks. There's not a Caleb Williams in next year's draft. There might not even be a Jaden Daniels in next year's draft. There might not be a Drake May. There is definitely going to be a JJ McCarthy, okay? There's definitely going to be a Michael Penix, and there's definitely going to be a Bo Nix. With that said, I'm not as high on JJ McCarthy as others. Some think he's going to go in the top 5. I saw today that Michael Penix Jr. is going in the top 15. There's all sorts of stuff. Is it smoke? Where there's smoke, there's fire. Is it, what is it, right? I do not suspect the Giants to pick a quarterback. I think this is a smokescreen. I think it's an old school smokescreen. End of the day, this is a team that can compete this year. I'm not saying they're going to be amazing, but they can compete this year. They need to knock this draft out of the park. In going out and getting JJ McCarthy with what you're paying Daniel Jones, so you're already destroying this guy's confidence. He's coming off injury. He's hoping to come back and prove his worth. And you go out and you get JJ McCarthy. It sends a really bad message to the quarterback. Okay? First thing. Second, it means a first rounder will not be on the field. So even though you have the pick 6th overall, that pick, he's not starting over Daniel Jones. You're paying him $40 million a year. He is not starting over Daniel Jones. So think about Rome Odunze here. He makes the most sense. It's so obvious. Rome Odunze with this wide receiver room, and if he gets picked a pick before for whatever reason, then you take Malik Neighbors or you take Marvin Harrison Jr., whoever's here, or you trade down. But taking a quarterback here would be so dumb. Unless you're going to trade up and get Caleb Williams, or you really have like a wicked high grade on Jaden Daniels or Drake May, and you think they're already better than Daniel Jones, makes no sense to take McCarthy here. Trading down makes some sense, but I think getting one of the 7 blue chip prospects that I brought up in the last video about the Chargers and why I think that they'll just stay and take Malik Neighbors, they need to take Rome Odunze. Reason being, Odunze may not be the best athlete in this draft at wide receiver testing-wise. On tape, he plays to the level you want him to play at. He's 6'3", gives a nice, body, a nice target to Daniel Jones. This is somebody that can also work with the quarterback. He's used to, of course, played with Michael Penix Jr. He's used to him working off script. He could be used to that with Daniel Jones working off script. He'd be playing with Jalen Hyatt, who offers that 4.3 speed down the field. He'd be playing with Darius Slayton, who offers incredible speed, and Wan'Dale Robinson, who offers speed. Wan'Dale is going to be a slot, okay? That's just what he is. And Darius Slayton might end up being the 4th receiver, and then you have Isaiah as probably the 5th, Isaiah Hodgins. So it would be Jalen Hyatt and Rome Odunze. If you did this with what is a new look offensive line, and Daniel Jones, who has shown flashes in the past, can be a good quarterback, okay? Then you have Devin Singletary at running back, Eric Gray, backing him up. You can draft a guy. Maybe you draft, somebody like a Trey Benson in the 3rd to be your starter, whatever. But the Giants have something here. However, they, in my opinion, will be setting themselves back if they spent the 1st round pick this year on a quarterback after spending $40 million on a quarterback. And also another thing, I think Joe Schoen is a very good GM. I think it's why you build from the inside out, right? Well, they went out, they got Brian Burns, they filled up their offensive line. Now the offensive line looks good. What was an issue for them last year? Their franchise investment, their quarterback, Daniel Jones, got hurt. Well, so what did they do? They go out, they spend money on Illuminor, like I said, Runyon. They spend money on Stinney. They go out and they get these guys. They even get a backup in Drew Lock for Daniel Jones. So there's stuff there, right? They're investing. They already invested money in Andrew Thomas. They have John Michael Schmitz, like I mentioned. So I like what we're seeing here for the Giants offensive line. it kind of tells us without telling us that they're probably going to rely on Daniel Jones, and they should. They should at least give him another year. And I think Rome Odunze would be a huge fit for them. So I think with getting a guy like Odunze, you're kind of diversifying that wide receiver room. There's a lot of speed, but there's not a lot of size. So I think you're getting more size there. Like Hyatt's, obviously, he's got some size, but now you're getting more filled out size. Hyatt's more skinny, tall. When you look at, somebody like Odunze, he's more filled out, can break tackles, can be your essentially Davante Adams. And that's really what he looks exactly like Davante Adams. So I think that would be huge. Daniel Jones in the red zone being able to throw it up to either Darren Waller if he could stay healthy, Daniel Bellinger, these big targets. And then if those guys aren't available, or maybe those are the second and third option, Rome Odunze becomes your number one option. The Giants have a shot, okay? I'm not saying they're going to win the division, but they have some talent here. And they told us that they have a shot when they went out and got Brian Burns. And up front, having Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Dexter Lawrence is going to be a disgusting trio, okay? So do not sleep on this team, but it starts with them making the right pick here or trading down and making the right picks after. I think they're going to stay here, and I think they end up taking Rome Odunze. So those are my thoughts. What do you guys think? Drop in the comment section below. I'm Jake Ellenbogen, and I'll see you guys soon. Later, folks.